Okay, so here we go with step 208. Our last step, we created the login, and we learned a lot about the session cookie and a session and how we create a session and what we do at the login with the login code. And now, a short but sweet lesson here. We're going to learn how to log out. So, a quick overview of what we're going to do. When we come to our site, of course, we have session start at the beginning of our page load, which is in our config page, and it establishes a session with the browser and the server, so the information can be stored on the server and accessed via the session code. When we go and we log in, we log in as our user and password, and we know that it's going to reassign the session ID. It's going to create a new ID, which it did. And now we are logged in, and we can move about, and we have 10 minutes with each move before it logs us out. And we're at the point now where we want to log out of our site. So the way that we do that is we have a logout, and if you watch the session ID, it ends in 8A2. What's going to happen is we're going to hit log out, and it's going to destroy the session, all the data in the session, and also set the cookie to expire, which means this is a new session. It created a new session. And in doing this, what it does is it creates a lot of security blockers. It prevents people from being able to hijack your session, and it's just a good, clean way to log out and move out of the site. The only page that we're changing in this site is the logout page, and we have that in our change log, and we can go and look at it. And this will be the only change in our entire site. So before we do that, though, let's go ahead and get ourselves set up. Let's open up our Dreamweaver, or whatever you're choosing to use at this point. I'm gonna, whoops, wrong page. Let me grab my Dreamweaver, bring it over here, and bring it into view. Was not prepared. We're going to go ahead and do what we always do. We're going to copy our last folder, which was 207. We're going to rename it to 208. And we're not going to update. We're going to go ahead and push that up a while. Go in. Let's change our config file to 208. Let's hit save, and let's just go out and check our local and see how that looks. So right here, it wasn't found. I went for it earlier because it was not created yet. If I bring it up, it takes me right to the login page. We can change that later if we choose to. For now, basically, we're just going right to our login, and let's make sure that we can log in. Great, we can log in. We can't log out yet. We're not supposed to be able to log out yet. Go ahead and hit inspect. Take a look down here and go into our application, cookies, localhost, and we'll see that we have our session ID established in the bottom of the window, and we're ready to go. So what we're going to do is as we've been doing lately, is copy and paste our code. And we'll go ahead and take all of it, and we'll bring it over here to Dreamweaver. We'll close out our config file, and we'll open up our logout. Now, as you see in our logout, we have our functions, we have our header, and some code, and we have our footer. What we do here actually is we're going to actually get rid of everything except for the config file. So when I paste it in, you'll see all we have is the config file, and the only reason that we have to include the config file is because that's where our session start function is, and we want that in. What's happening here is in your session, all the information for your session is stored in a session array, And what we're doing is we're basically setting all the information, all the variables, all the key value pairs stored in that session array, we're setting them to null, to nothing. We're wiping out the array to make sure that we leave no trace of information behind. Now, this is a very simple approach, and in a lot of instances, you would not want to do this, such as shopping carts, things like that. If you had a shopping cart, you want to keep the items that are in a cart. Just like how you go back to Amazon and the things you added in a cart were there, and it knows it's you, and it knows it's you because of the session cookie has that value, and it passes back to the server. The server looks up the data that's associated with that cookie ID, with that session ID, and it pulls that information back out and stores it in the session again. Someone like Amazon would actually keep this session information tucked away in the database rather than a temporary file, which is what's happening with us right now. So when we hit logout, we come in, it does the session start, it comes down here, this is all on the server, it wipes out all the session information. We can actually use something called session unset as well. I choose to kind of old school it, and but we could use the unset as well, the session unset. The next thing that we want to do is because of the way that we're doing it now, a lot of times we don't want to destroy that cookie. We want to leave it there so when they come back, we have that information about them. But we're starting out clean and simple, and clean and simple is getting rid of the session altogether, any trace of it. And so what we have to do is we have to go ahead and look for the cookie. And when we look for the cookie, basically what we're doing is we're getting the parameters from the cookie. The cookie is an object, and we're getting the parameters, object basically being an array, very similar to an associative array. And what we're doing is we're resetting things in the cookie. And so what we're resetting in the cookie is basically we're nulling out everything. The path, secure, domain, HTTP. These are just different parameters that are stored in the session itself and related to the cookie, and we're setting it to the current time minus 42,000 seconds. So basically what we're doing is we're saying you are well over expired and you should be let go. And what'll happen is when this information gets back to the browser, it will actually delete that cookie. In our case, what'll happen is the session start function will actually create a new session and a new cookie. So once we've set that cookie to expire and die, we come in here and we do what's called a session destroy. And basically what a session destroy does is it gets rid of your session. It gets rid of the session that it's established between your browser and the web server itself. And once that is done, we do the redirect, the header redirect, and we just send them to the home page and exit out. The nice part about all of this is it's all basically done on the server. So we don't need any HTML. We don't need the header. We don't need functions. We're not using any of the functions. And we don't need a footer. All we need to do is execute this code in the order that we're executing it in, and it will take care of everything and send us back to the home page. So we'll go ahead and we'll hit save. Go out. We'll go to our local host. We'll watch our session ID. We'll go to our profile, which we weren't logged in. So because we weren't logged in, we're able to, it redirects us to the login page. And we'll go ahead. And if you notice, profile was available, but we wiped out the session. And if you notice, it just writes itself with the right menu settings as well. So now we're going to go ahead and log in. We saw that it reset the session ID. We're in, moving about, doing our thing, and we decide that we want to log out. Now let's watch the session ID. We log out. It wiped out all the session data. It killed the session, and when we were redirected to the home page, it recreated a new session and gave us a new session ID. So that's how we log out with with this script. It's pretty straightforward, and there's some reading provided with this lesson around cookies and sessions that gives a pretty good overview on how some of these things work and some of the things that you should be considering. So on our next page, our next step in 209, exciting enough, we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to be able to update our profile. Go in and change our first name, last name, and things like that. That'll be 209. And then following that in 210, we'll actually do a registration page. So good stuff. Excited to keep moving forward.